Tony Romo has been fired from CBS, ending one of the network's longest-running broadcast partnerships. Now, after days of silence, Jim Nantz is finally speaking out about his longtime partner and what this shocking decision means. Let me catch you up. Here's where things stand. Tony Romo was arrested on the night of July 23rd, pulled over on Interstate 43 in Milwaukee County. He'd spent that day competing in the Wisconsin Amateur Championship, and hours later he was in handcuffs, suspected of operating a vehicle while intoxicated. He was pulled over on Interstate 43 in Milwaukee County on the night of July 23, hours after competing in the Wisconsin Amateur Championship, and taken into custody after performing poorly on standardized field sobriety tests. A week went by. CBS said nothing. Then, on a Friday morning, the network finally broke its silence. Not with a press conference, not with an interview, just one sentence. Tony Romo is on leave from his role at CBS Sports until further notice. A statement from the network read, "That's it. No explanation, no timeline, no mention of whether Romo asked for the break or whether CBS forced it on him." And here's the part that made this real for millions of football fans. J.J. Watt is stepping into Romo's chair. CBS said that J.J. Watt will join Jim Nantz and Tracy Wolfson as CBS Sports' lead NFL team during Romo's absence. Nantz's broadcast partner isn't just taking a few weeks off quietly. He's been replaced in the booth on the biggest crew in American sports TV, with a different analyst sitting where he sat for 9 years. Now, Jim Nantz is the man who spent the better part of a decade calling Romo his friend before he ever called him his broadcast partner. He's the guy who told Sports Illustrated their friendship predates any deal, going back to production meetings when Nantz was covering the Cowboys and Romo was still under center. I can go back years covering the Cowboys and watching him in these production meetings and being absolutely dazzled by what I saw. Nantz said once, describing the years before either man knew CBS would ever put them together. He's the one who's flown to Romo's golf events, had dinner with him on Fridays and Saturdays during the season, called their partnership something that started long before any contract. There's a friendship there that predates the arranged marriage by CBS, is how he once put it. That's the man who now has to sit next to J.J. Watt on Sunday afternoons instead. The timing makes this even messier. CBS's regular season doesn't start until September 13th, which on paper gives Romo 6 weeks to sort out his situation before missing a single broadcast. But naming Watt as the fill-in analyst, not a one-week substitute, but a stated replacement during Romo's absence, tells a different story. The fact that Watt has been named as his replacement is a clear indication that Romo's leave will extend beyond the 6-week mark. Nobody at CBS is promising Romo gets his seat back for opening weekend. Nobody's promising he gets it back at all. Romo has a court date on the calendar too, September 21st, which lands in the middle of week 2 of the season. The broadcaster was ordered to appear in court Sept 21, which would be the Monday night of the NFL's Week 2, and the top CBS matchup of Week 2 figures to be the Pittsburgh Steelers visiting the AFC champion New England Patriots. So even if CBS wanted to rush him back for the opener, his own legal calendar is working against it. The reactions started rolling in almost immediately, and they weren't all coming from the same direction. Radio host Boomer Esiason had actually predicted CBS would stay quiet altogether. Boomer Esiason told his radio audience barely a day earlier that he didn't expect CBS to comment on the situation at all, a read that lined up with how the network had handled things all week. He was wrong, but only by about 24 hours. Inside the building, the mood was different than the silence suggested. One person close to the network told the Daily Mail the network wasn't trying to pretend nothing happened. "I don't want to act like it's not a big deal, because it is," the source said. But a second insider pushed back on the idea that Romo's job was ever really at risk, framing the arrest as a lapse rather than a firing offense. A second characterized the arrest as a lapse in judgment rather than anything approaching a fireable offense, noting Romo had reached out to his bosses almost the moment it happened. Then there's Jimmy Traina, who was mid-column on the story when CBS's statement dropped, and he read the wording carefully. He pointed out the release specifically said Romo was on leave, not fired, not terminated, still employed. That means he hasn't been fired and he's still with the company. But Traina also flagged something that undercut any read of this as routine. Naming Watt as the fill-in signals Romo is going to miss real games, not just a media appearance or two. What's surprising to me here is CBS announcing that J.J. Watt will join Jim Nantz in the network's lead NFL booth. That would mean Romo is expected to miss some games. So that's the shape of it heading into the rest of this story. 9 years of Nantz and Romo ended, at least for now, by one late-night stop on a Wisconsin highway. A new analyst installed in Romo's seat with no return date attached, and a broadcaster whose entire public identity for the better part of a decade has been built on defending the man who now isn't allowed to work. To understand how big a shift this is for Nantz, you have to go back to what actually happened on that stretch of highway outside Milwaukee, because the details didn't leak out all at once. They came in pieces, each one making the story harder for CBS to sit on. Romo was pulled over the evening of July 23rd. Romo, 46, was arrested July 23 after he was stopped while driving south on Interstate 43 in Wisconsin. And according to the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office report, Romo performed poorly on field sobriety tests before getting taken into custody, booked, and released. He wasn't just pulled over for one thing either. Deputies cited him for an open container, unsafe passing, and refusing an intoxication test. In addition to his arrest, Romo was cited for having an open bottle of alcohol in the vehicle, unsafe passing on the right, and refusing to take a test for intoxication. When the body camera footage eventually surfaced, it didn't do Romo any favors. In the video, an officer walks him through the results of his sobriety tests, and Romo's own reaction is caught on tape. "Did I pass this test?" he asked. "No, I didn't, huh?" A few moments later, pushing back on the suspicion he was drunk, he can be heard invoking the round of golf he just played. "Because I'm coming from the golf course, you think that I'm drunk?" he said. He also told deputies, according to the footage, that he'd been on his way to see family. Romo told officers he was on his way to visit grandma and grandpa when he was pulled over. None of that reads well against the backdrop of what officers found in the vehicle. Deputies conducted an inventory of Romo's black Jeep before it was towed, and that's when the open container turned up. Citations released by the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office indicated an open bottle of an alcoholic beverage was found in the passenger side of Romo's black Jeep during an inventory before it was towed. He was cuffed, processed, and let go the same night. Romo was released later that night. Legally, this isn't a case that disappears quietly. Wisconsin treats a first OWI offense as a civil matter rather than a criminal one, but it still comes with real consequences. A suspended license, fines, and the possibility of a mandated sobriety program, depending on the results of his blood alcohol testing. A first offense charge of OWI carries a fine and a temporary driver's license suspension in Wisconsin. And depending on Romo's blood alcohol level, he could also be subject to a year in a sobriety program. His court date landed on September 21st. Right in the thick of the season, CBS was hoping he'd be calling. What makes this sting more for Nantz and the rest of the broadcast crew is where it happened. Wisconsin isn't some random stop on Romo's schedule. It's home turf. Romo, a Wisconsin native, had played in an amateur golf tournament earlier that day. This wasn't a road trip gone wrong in an unfamiliar city. It happened in the state he grew up in, during an amateur tournament he was competing in for fun, on his own time, in the dead middle of the NFL offseason when nobody expected a single headline out of him. That's part of why this landed so hard. Romo built his post-playing career on being the easygoing, relatable guy in the booth. Someone who golfs with celebrities, jokes with Nantz on air, plays in pro-ams during his time off. This was supposed to be one of those low-stakes off-season weekends. Instead, it became the story that pulled him off the biggest broadcast team in the sport. For context on how quickly this usually plays out around football commentators, look at what happened to another network analyst less than a year earlier. Mark Sanchez, an NFL analyst for Fox, was suspended after a felony and misdemeanor case tied to a late-night altercation outside a bar. Last October, Mark Sanchez was suspended by Fox Sports after the NFL analyst was charged with felony and misdemeanor counts related to a late-night altercation outside a bar. Sanchez was initially portrayed as the victim in the assault, after reports indicated he received treatment at a local hospital for stab wounds, but police later accused him of being the instigator. Fox terminated his employment last November. That case ended in a firing within a month. Romo's situation is different in severity. Nobody's alleging violence here, but it put every football fan and every network executive on notice that broadcast booths aren't immune from real consequences when something goes wrong off camera. There's also a sports TV precedent that everyone in the industry immediately pointed to. Charles Barkley. Back in 2008, TNT suspended its Inside the NBA analyst after his own DUI arrest. TNT suspended inside the NBA analyst Charles Barkley for 6 weeks after his arrest on DUI charges in December 2008. Barkley spent 3 days in jail and paid upwards of $2,000 in fines. Since that time, he's avoided any further legal entanglements. Barkley didn't return to his chair until after the NBA's All-Star break that February, a suspension that stretched well past the initial 6 weeks originally floated. After TNT NBA analyst Charles Barkley was arrested for DUI in December 2008, the network suspended him more than a month, with his return not occurring until after the NBA's All-Star weekend in February 2009. If CBS follows that same pattern with Romo, Nantz could be looking at an entire opening stretch of the season, maybe more without his partner. And that's before anyone even factors in what happens if the legal process drags into October or November. Meanwhile, there's a strange contrast sitting right next to Romo's arrest report. Sportscaster Al Michaels, NBC's longtime play-by-play voice, had his own brush with the law years earlier, and it barely touched his job. Michaels went on to plead no contest to a reduced charge of reckless driving and was sentenced to 80 hours of community service. And NBC's lead play-by-play veteran did not miss any assignments during the 2013-14 NFL season. So there's no fixed playbook here. Every network has handled these situations differently, and how CBS ultimately treats Romo will say as much about the network's priorities as it does about Romo's future. Right now, all anyone outside CBS's offices really knows is the framework: an open-ended leave, a replacement analyst already installed, and a network that clearly isn't in a hurry to put a date on Romo's return. While the public got one sentence from CBS, the private conversations inside the network tell a fuller story, and they explain why the network moved the way it did. The arrest happened on July 23rd. The statement didn't come until 8 days later. In the 8 days since Tony Romo was arrested in Wisconsin for suspicion of operating while intoxicated, CBS had said nothing. On Friday morning, it said plenty. In a one-sentence press release, Tony Romo is on leave from his role at CBS Sports until further notice. That gap wasn't an accident. Sources close to the network described executives closing ranks around Romo almost immediately, treating this as a situation to manage quietly rather than one to address publicly right away. One of those sources, speaking to the Daily Mail before CBS ever released a statement, made clear the network wasn't taking this lightly even while staying silent. The Daily Mail had reported days earlier that CBS executives had already closed ranks around Romo, with one source telling the outlet, "I don't want to act like it's not a big deal, because it is." That's not the language of a network preparing to cut someone loose. That's the language of a network trying to protect an asset while acknowledging the optics are bad. A second insider went further, characterizing what happened as more of a personal misstep than a professional one, and crucially noted that Romo didn't hide from his bosses after it happened. A second characterized the arrest as a lapse in judgment, rather than anything approaching a fireable offense, noting Romo had reached out to his bosses almost the moment it happened. That detail matters. It suggests Romo wasn't caught off guard by CBS's leave decision. He'd already been in contact with the people who'd eventually make that call. Now, why would CBS protect him this hard? Because of what he's worth to them. Romo isn't just any analyst. He's the centerpiece of a contract that redefined what color commentators get paid. The former Dallas Cowboys quarterback was quickly dubbed Romostradamus for his ability to predict plays, and soon garnered an unprecedented $180 million contract from CBS to continue being their lead analyst. He signed a 10-year deal that runs through the 2030 season, reportedly worth somewhere in the range of $17 to $18 million annually. He is midway through a 10-year contract with CBS Sports that runs through 2030 and pays a reported $17 million per year. That contract is exactly why NBC Sports pointed out CBS's hands are somewhat tied here regardless of how the network feels. Romo's long-term status will depend largely on his contract. He surely could be terminated at any time, but unless the arrest falls within the definition of a termination with cause, CBS will have to keep paying him. There's a difference between benching someone and voiding a contract that size, and CBS knows it. There's also the money angle around what this deal was supposed to buy CBS in the first place. Stability, star power, a familiar voice for the biggest games on the calendar. Romo, Tom Brady, Chris Collinsworth, and Troy Aikman, to name a few, are with us every single week, from September through January. And that familiarity is important. Pulling him off the air, even temporarily, undercuts the exact reason CBS paid what it paid. So the network split the difference. It didn't fire him. It didn't clear him either. It parked him in limbo, on leave, a phrase specifically chosen because it doesn't close any doors. The release is very specific in saying Romo is on leave. That means he hasn't been fired and he's still with the company. And then it moved fast on the one decision it couldn't avoid making. Who replaces him on air? That's where J.J. Watt comes in. And CBS didn't hesitate on this part. Watt had already been climbing the network's depth chart before any of this happened. Romo's replacement is a rising star at CBS Sports. Last season, Watt was elevated to the network's #2 NFL booth, just 2 years after having joined the team as a studio analyst. This wasn't some emergency scramble for a warm body. CBS had a ready-made answer sitting right there in its own building. What CBS hasn't answered is what happens further down the depth chart, since pulling Watt up into the #1 booth leaves a hole of his own. While it remains to be seen how long Watt will fill in for Romo, and who will take Watt's place alongside Ian Eagle, CBS said it would provide further information about its 2026-27 NFL roster at a later date. There's one more wrinkle buried in the timing of all this. CBS holds its annual all-network NFL Media Day in New York in mid-August, the event where every analyst typically faces a room full of reporters and answers exactly the kind of questions Romo would rather not answer right now. His suspension conveniently means he won't have to. If nothing else, Romo's suspension will allow him to avoid having to field questions during CBS's annual NFL Media Confab in New York. The all-hands preview of the upcoming season is set to take place on August 11. Whether that's a coincidence or a convenient side effect of the timeline, it's one more way this leave benefits Romo, just as much as it protects CBS's image. Either way, the network has bought itself time. Time to see how the legal case unfolds. Time to gauge public reaction, and time to figure out whether Nantz spends the whole season next to Watt or gets his old partner back before the calendar turns. To understand what Nantz is dealing with now, you need to understand what he spent nearly a decade building. Because this isn't the first time he's had to publicly carry Romo through a rough patch. It's just the first time the rough patch involved handcuffs instead of criticism. Go back to earlier this year. Ahead of his 40th Masters broadcast, Nantz sat down on the Pat McAfee show and got asked directly about the growing chorus of fans who felt Romo had lost his edge in the booth. His answer wasn't hedged at all. He is unique, and you don't want everyone out there to be the same. He has a different perspective. He's fun. He is incredibly knowledgeable about what's happening, and the X's and O's what's going on in a football play, Nantz said, defending his partner without a single caveat. He didn't stop there either. Asked about the noise surrounding Romo's performance, Nantz leaned all the way in. We've been together for 9 years. It's been a joyride. I know there's a lot of noise out there, and sometimes the noise just feeds more noise. But Tony doesn't pay any attention to it. I don't pay any attention to it. There are a lot of people that love him. The great majority do. I love him. It's been a thrill working with him, he said. That wasn't a one-off answer either. It's a pattern going back years. Back in 2023, when Romo faced heavy criticism after a rough postseason, Nantz went on Sports Illustrated's media podcast and dismissed the entire backlash outright. During an appearance on Sports Illustrated's SI Media with Jimmy Traina, Nantz said the criticism Romo faced was a misinformation attempt, which seemingly only began during the playoffs. That's not soft diplomacy. That's a broadcast partner going to bat in public, on the record, calling the criticism itself illegitimate. And it's not just talk. Romo has echoed the same closeness from his side too. In one interview about their evolving partnership, Romo described what their relationship actually looks like off the air, past the choreography of a broadcast. We're not rehearsing 8,000 things. We're talking. We're going to dinner together. We're coming on a podcast together, and we actually really love each other, and it's really fun, he said. This is a friendship that runs through actual dinners, actual golf rounds, actual time spent together that has nothing to do with a broadcast schedule. That's what makes the current moment so different from anything Nantz has navigated with Romo before. Every previous controversy, the strange sounds on air, the missed calls, the reports of CBS executives flying to Dallas to try to fix their chemistry, was something Nantz could talk through, defend, contextualize with a quote on a podcast. He could stand next to Romo in the booth the very next Sunday and prove the doubters wrong together. This time, There's no next Sunday to prove anything. Nantz doesn't have his partner sitting beside him to defend. He has an open seat, filled by someone else, while the man he've called his friend for nearly a decade sits at home waiting on a court date. It's worth remembering just how deep this friendship goes before CBS ever paired them professionally. Nantz has talked about knowing Romo from his playing days, tracing it back to shared production meetings during Cowboys coverage, long before either man had any reason to think they'd end up calling games together. According to Nantz, the two men developed a strong bond over golf while Romo was still playing in the NFL, which has translated to the broadcast booth. "I've known Tony for a long time. We found some common ground in that we both have this great love affair for the game of golf," Nantz said. He's described the bond as something built on genuine shared interest, not professional convenience, something that existed and would have existed with or without a broadcast contract attached to it. This is also why the earlier reports of tension between them landed as such a surprise to fans who only knew the public version of the friendship. Insiders had suggested things weren't as smooth as Nantz's on-air praise made it look. Romo has sat beside Jim Nantz on NFL, on CBS, since 2017, carrying a reported 10-year, $180 million contract through 2030. Yet the chemistry that once defined the pairing had grown increasingly difficult to locate. The Athletic's Andrew Marchand observed in January that Romo doesn't appear as if he does the homework, and separately, that whatever trust once bound him to Nantz is not there. Marchand didn't just make a passing comment either. He explained exactly what he meant by it on his own podcast, pointing to preparation as the root of the issue. "You have to keep studying film to know what's going on in the league, and you have to take some time," Marchand said. "I can't tell you 100% that Romo isn't studying, but that's kind of the rumor on the street, number one. And number two, you're watching the game and just not getting much insight." That's a serious accusation to make about a lead NFL analyst making close to $18 million a year, that he isn't putting in the work anymore. And it's exactly the kind of criticism Nantz had been publicly waving off for years, right up until an arrest report made the entire conversation moot for the time being. So when people ask what Nantz's reaction to all of this really tells us, the answer is layered. It's not one soundbite. It's 9 years of him consistently choosing to stand next to Romo publicly. Even when insiders were telling reporters privately that the partnership had frayed, even when the numbers on Romo's game day insight were reportedly slipping, even when the noise, as Nantz called it, kept building year over year, that loyalty was always going to be tested eventually. Nobody expected the test to come from a police report instead of a ratings dip. Now Nantz has to figure out what that loyalty looks like with cameras rolling and no Romo in the room. Every previous chapter of this partnership played out with both men present, defending each other on podcasts, sitting shoulder to shoulder through 3 Super Bowls, showing up to each other's dinners and golf rounds long after the cameras stopped. Romo has been CBS lead NFL analyst since 2017 and has called 3 Super Bowls alongside play-by-play announcer Jim Nantz. That run is paused now, and nobody, not CBS, not Nantz, not Romo himself, has said publicly when it resumes. What we do know is the shape of the season ahead. CBS has one preseason broadcast on the schedule before the real games begin, and its top team almost never works those anyway. CBS has just one nationally televised preseason game on its schedule on August 28, but its lead announcing team typically doesn't work preseason contests. The real test starts once the regular season kicks off in Minneapolis, with Nantz and Watt calling a broadcast that 6 weeks earlier, everyone assumed would be Nantz and Romo. Romo is being benched 6 weeks before he and play-by-play veteran Jim Nantz were set to kick off the network's regular season coverage in Minneapolis. There's a version of this where Romo's absence stretches the entire season and threads directly into a legal outcome nobody can predict yet. His case doesn't resolve on CBS's schedule. It resolves on a Wisconsin court schedule, and that court date lands in the second week of the year. Nantz is supposed to be calling the biggest games in the sport. If the case drags, so does the uncertainty hanging over that booth. There's another version where Romo's leave ends up looking more like Barkley's did back in 2008. A suspension that outlasts its original estimate and only ends once a very public news cycle quiets down on its own. TNT suspended inside the NBA analyst, Charles Barkley, for 6 weeks after his arrest on DUI charges in December 2008. Barkley spent 3 days in jail and paid upwards of $2,000 in fines. Since that time, he's avoided any further legal entanglements. Barkley came back. He kept his seat. He never had another incident. If CBS is looking for a precedent to lean on for how this ends, that's probably the one they're hoping for. What's certain right now is that CBS has left every door open on purpose. The network hasn't set any kind of target date for when or if Romo gets his old chair back. The network did not set a timetable for a potential reinstatement of its lead NFL analyst. And industry voices who've covered this closely all season have said the same thing in different words. This isn't over, it's paused. It's unclear when or if Romo will return to CBS Sports. For Nantz, that uncertainty is the whole story now. He spent 9 years building a public case for Romo. On golf broadcasts, on podcasts, in interviews nobody had to push him into. That his partner deserved the benefit of the doubt no matter what critics said about missed calls or lost chemistry. That defense was always framed around performance, around noise, around numbers that could be debated and eventually proven wrong on the next broadcast. This is different. There's no next broadcast to prove anything with. There's a police report, a body camera video, an open bottle in a towed Jeep, and a court date sitting on the calendar like a countdown. Nantz can't out-argue any of that on a podcast. All he can do is show up to work, sit next to J.J. Watt instead of the man he's called a friend for a decade.